Okay, welcome back to my series on creating a deck builder game. In the last episode, we talked about the concept of an asteroid mining deck builder game. It's a two-player game where you're trying to mine an asteroid faster than your opponent. The unique aspect is you're going to start off with a much larger deck than most deck building games, and you're going to be trading cards into the shop, or like the shop, and being able to get better and better cards. There'll be 4 rarities for cards. You'll need a ship to bring the actual void opals back to Earth, and that's the only way that they actually count as victory points. Winning the game is whoever brings back the most void opals to Earth before the store runs out of cards. So let's go back to our spreadsheet that we were working on in the last episode, and you can see here that I've added in a few additional cards based around what we've discussed down here in the card types. I haven't added in anything that's related to delaying an opponent, but I figured that, this is we're already at around 50 different card types. So one of the glaring gaps that I see in this game right now is that there's really a limited amount of early game. And the reason for that is there's like the entire game right now is just kind of the deck building mechanic, which can be fun, but there's, no way to not necessarily just hamper the other player, but basically set yourself up for future success. So I was thinking, like, do we need other mining materials that allow you to kind of have some early game advantage, right? So maybe we use we have like a really basic drill, and what we can drill with that is not void opals, but something else. And those don't go into our discard pile. They stay, like when purchased, they stay separately as like a amount of coins that you can use and spend at any time. I don't know how I feel about that. I really like the idea of, trying to whittle down your deck as much as possible to upgrade your equipment. It's really hard. I haven't play tested this yet. So I think what we need to do today is actually set up the cards so that they can be printed for playtest. Like I mentioned before, I really like to use the card creator right here. The tabletop creator is much more fully featured and potentially easier to use, but I don't know it as well. So I would recommend the tabletop creator if you have the funds. It's not cheap though, unfortunately. If you're interested in doing this, again, find the best tool for you and work with that. We're going to start with card creator today, even though it hasn't been updated in quite some time. So we have our new game. Our project is going to be called Asteroid Miner for now. We'll come up with a better name later. And the goal today would really be to translate some of these card ideas that we've come up with into something that can be printed as a paper prototype. So we're gonna just stop these from being full screen, and we're gonna create a blueprint. So here's our first card blueprint. The way it's set up right now is the title of the card and an image. And if we go ahead and just click OK on that, you can see that we have, the back of the card and the front of the card. And the reason that I like this software over like maybe using like Photoshop or Illustrator or something else is that I can just say, hey, I want 5 cards in this. And then when I go ahead and do a export for printing, you can see I now have 5 cards available, and I have the fronts and backs, and I can adjust all kinds of things in here, which is really useful to me. You can also use like spreadsheets in Tabletop Creator to power some of this stuff. I'm not doing that because I iterate so much on the actual like card layout and design. But for now, we need spots for all of our information. So we do need a card name spot. Ideally, we'll have some kind of like iconography for the card value. I don't know if I want to do like frames of different colors or icons for different colors. Different people do it different ways. Like we could have different background colors that signify different levels of cards. So we could have, the normal like different rarity colors from some game or whatever, where the background of the car gives you some insight into, oh, that one's exotic. I'm not sure I want to go that way, but that is an option. No, it won't let me remove it because I don't have any other cards. There we go. Or if we want to do an icon, which is another option. So if we go into the icon here, we could either create different icons or use the icons that are here. Again, I don't know if they have anything that would be super useful for like different tiers of cards. I'm not seeing anything that blows me away, but that is an option as well. Ideally, we would create our own icons to signify the different tiers. For now, I'm just going to do text, and I'm just going to use the first letter from each one. So by default, it's going to be I for industrial. We're going to pick a font. We're going to make that font nice and big. And you can see here, if I go back in here, we have that available to us. So that would be an industrial card with a name and an image. And I'm going to want a spot for card text. This could be where we put in either our effects or like our color commentary or something along those lines. And it's going to be laid out just like the title of it. And if we click OK, you can see here that we have that option now. So let's go ahead and just quickly, add in some of these cards. So this is an industrial card. Again, we're going to have a deck of 40, so we'll want to figure that out later. And then we're going to separate our cards into, let's think this through, because we can have different blueprints, which is interesting. So I could have like a card set for, this could be items, and I didn't spell it right, of course. And this could be like ship components. And then we'll probably need a blueprint for the resources, which will just be the opal. But do we want all of our items to be the same? That is the question. I guess it doesn't matter for like a print and play prototype, so let's not worry about it right now. We can duplicate this a few times if we need. And this one is, and it is refined, and this is better guy, and this is precision, and this is best guy, and this is exotic. So I could do this for all of the cards and figure out how many of each of these that we need and want. So we could create all of these cards in here and then try to figure out how many we would need to build out the game. So I'm going to go through and do that, and I will be right back. Actually, I'm gonna stop real quick. One of the things that I've done here is I have this group of cards on the unnamed blueprint, and we know we're going to use the same kind of card value or rarity indicator. One of the things that you could do is actually like create a new set of cards with the same blueprint. I don't totally understand why someone would do that, but you can also go in here and copy a blueprint and paste it onto another card. And so now it like blanks out some of the information here, but you can see now we have that card value indicator just like on this one. But because these blueprints are still not the same necessarily, I know they're both called unnamed right now, but because they're not the same, I can adjust them separately. So if I'm not going to have any like colorful text on here, I can actually just change this to be an image, and it doesn't impact these cards, which is really cool. And like I said before, you can adjust the numbers of these, so that way when you go to actually print them, you can have them all show up nicely in a way that you can kind of cut them out and use them. And so I'm going to carry on with doing the ship components. I keep having issues remembering what the order is. For those of you with like obsessive compulsive tendencies, messing up the order, as I've done a couple of times, must drive you absolutely crazy. And unfortunately, oh, actually you can reorder them as needed, it looks like, which is good. I usually don't drag and drop them, so I never noticed that before. So we have the engines done, and we're going to do storage. Did storage, didn't we? Yeah, we did storage. So we also did engine. I'm really silly. So I just have to do power and life support. So let's go back in here and we'll just... I did it again, didn't I? Okay, so at this point we have a good number of items. We don't have anything yet that again allows you to interact with the other player directly, so those would be cards that would certainly need to be added. You can also see here that if we consider like the deck building store, if we have a store of 7 items, odds are, depending on the allocations of these, some of those items will be of a higher quality than maybe you can buy. So one of the things that we'll need, other than cards that delay the opponent and the round trip card, we'll also need a card to reset or change the store. Maybe a card to allow you to draw more cards. Something that like the delay opponent would be to reduce their card draw, so maybe from 7 down to 5 or what have you. This is to like secure victory points, maybe kind of like a clone a card or duplicate a card effect, so to speak, so that if you're trading in, you know, a precision robot, you have this card and it will also act as a precision robot, kind of doubling the value of something. What else might be interesting? Actually, for delay the opponents, we have reduce their card draw, but that's not the only delay opponent that we could do. Reduce their staff? Would that be helpful? We could depower their items for a turn, so maybe cause something to not have an effect next turn. I don't think reducing staff works because staff are going to be played each turn, right? They're going to be part of your normal card draw. You're going to play them out. Is there anything else that we need in terms of delay opponent? Maybe like a shop closed card where the opponent can't buy or trade anything with the shop that turn. That would be a good delay tactic. Anything else? Let me, if you thought of some good delay tactic cards, let me know. So those would be the additional cards that I would add before I print this out. And then the next step is really trying to figure out what the ratios look like. So if we're going to start with like 2 players having 40 cards, that might actually, for like a print and play, that might actually be too much. But what about 20 cards for each player? That still makes things kind of interesting. You would do 2 turns and then shuffle, and then on your 3rd turn you would be drawing one of the cards that you had, or sorry, potentially one new card from your deck. So that's kind of interesting. So, and 20 cards each player is much more fathomable to do. So let's add in a column for number in set. So we know we want a bunch of guys. We know we want a bunch of basic drills. We know we want a couple of explosive charges. We know we want a round trip. So each player is going to have a round trip. So we need at least 2. And then we're going to want to be able to purchase some. So actually, let's build out the starting deck now. So actually, let's give each player 2 round trip cards. And let's say 4 explosive charges, 6 drills, and 6 guys. What else? Is there anything else we want to give? Mine carts. Yeah, let's do mine carts as well. And so ideally, these won't really have powerful special abilities. I would like explosive charges to have some kind of interesting ability. The 6 guys means that you won't be able to do a round trip until you have a ship that could support that many, which seems a little bit high. So maybe life support could be done a little bit differently. Let's say with life support, maybe life support does have a value on it so that you know the number of people that you can support, and it scales from the starting amount. How do we feel about that? Or do we do mostly robots and less people, and that way the life support issue isn't as big at the start, and then we can add more people into the store and less robots, which would make it kind of interesting because then you have to have more life support. Let's try that. So maybe we drop that down to 1 guy and 5 robots. And so we have 10, 12, 13, 15, 20. We have 20 cards for each player as a starting deck. Yeah, that could be interesting. So I'm going to go ahead and, you know, we'll have 2 round trips for each person. So that's 4 round trips. And then we should probably put another, let's say 4 in the store. So if we have 8 round trip cards, that means you'll have 2 to start with, and there'll be up to 4 more to pick up. And some people might pick up none, other people might pick up all of them. That feels like a reasonable amount. And with the number of other cards that we have to kind of build out, I think that might be a good starting point in terms of ratio. 4 explosive charges per person, so that means we have 8 total in the deck. And then again, we're probably not going to want or need too many of those, but it'll depend on what we do for special features. So let's just start with 8 for now, and we can figure out the rest later. 6 drills a piece, so that's going to give us 12 basic drills to start with. 1 guy each, so that's actually going to give us 2 guys to start with, but we'll definitely do more. 5 robots each, so that's going to give us 10 robot cards. Where are you? I'm blind. There we go. And we'll probably add a few more of those, and 2 mine carts each. So that would be 4 to start with. And we're already at a game that has 44 cards. So you can see, like, in a recent one they did, I think it ended up being like 200 cards in the deck. A lot of people like to play smaller deck builders than that. And yeah, you can scale a deck builder game as big or as small as you want. You just have to remember that printing it is going to become more expensive the more cards you add. A lot of people like deck builders that maybe start out a little bit smaller than this, and we could scale this down. We could do that, but I think for me the interest is in having that initial hand and having all of those cards really be a form of currency, and deciding like, oh geez, do I really want to trade in, you know, my explosive charge or one of my couple of my robots to get a better robot or to get a better guy? Do I have the life support to get that guy and use him? So there's opportunities there, right? Like we can also do with power, we could hook power up to some of the other things that we're doing and limit cards through power. And so your selection will be based on how good your ship is. So there's some interesting mechanics there that we can kind of exploit and play with. But it'll definitely be a card game with a lot more cards than I think people are used to. Basically, as I go along, I will, like, let's say we assume that we're going to have like 12 basic drills and that the players are going to get all those basic drills. How many good drills do we think that we'll want in the deck? And so it'll be kind of like scaling down, right? So maybe we want 6 good drills and we want 2 better drills and only 1 best drill. And how interesting would that be? Right now you're competing for that best drill. And you know that you need 3 exotics to be able to get a void opal. So yeah, I mean, and we could maybe limit it to like, oh, you need X thing to be able to get the void opal. But I think just randomly, like just doing exotics makes a lot of sense to me. I think for like guys, I mean, these would be minors. Saying guy was kind of silly to begin with, because they could be women, they could be androgynous, non-gendered. It doesn't really matter. That was just kind of a quick thing off the top of my head, not necessarily the best choice. But I think that we want to make sure that this dilutes the deck a little bit. And if we know that life support is tied to these values, your maximum that you could have would be 12 people. And so we want to make sure that we think that through a little bit. So maybe, you know, maybe there'll be 2 best guys, 4 better guys, and 6 good guys to hire. So now we're already at 65 cards, which is bigger than a deck of playing cards. So that's something to kind of keep in mind as well as you're scaling these things up. If we do 10 robots, we decided that we really want to scale that back. So let's say we have 4 good robots, 2 better robots, and 1 best robot, 8 explosive charges. I think that seems like a good start as well. Maybe we won't have any additional ones that you can buy of the industrial type. So let's drop that down to 6, 4, and 2. Mine carts. Let's just do 2 each. Gravity sleds. Let's do the same numbers as the carts. Am I missing one? Good. Yeah, I am. And I did the wrong one. Okay. Excavator rovers. Let's do, we got the void opals. So we'll want to have, how many void opals will we want to have? Maybe, if we know that it's going to take 3 exotics for each one, how many exotics are we at right now? So we're at 11. So if there's 12, we'd be doing 4, right? You might have to like sacrifice ship pieces to be able to get void opals. Is kind of interesting. Maybe we'll do 2 exotics. That way we're at 5 to 6. That seems fair. So now we're doing, let's say, 12 void opals. It'd be really hard, near impossible for anyone to do that. I'm going to come back here and just make a note. 2 exotics per void opal. Then the ship parts. So what do we have for cards here? 118 cards. 118 cards. And there's going to be like, how many pieces of art? 50. You know, I used to look at that and think, man, okay, if I can commission each of those pieces of art at, I don't know, $25 a piece. Yeah, $1,250 in art. Honestly, I get it. I want artists to have work. I just can't easily afford it. I don't have the artistic talent myself. I don't have the time to develop that talent. So for a project like this, especially if I'm not going to like sell it to the wider world, if I'm just going to play it with family and friends, I'm probably just going to use Midjourney to be able to craft these images, and I will go through that process in a later version of this video. So let's go back to the ship. We know that at the end, there's going to be 2 ships. So we don't necessarily need a lot of components for ships, and each player is only going to be able to have 1 ship. Would that be good? Or would it be cooler to have multiple ships? I think just 1 ship for simplicity, right? So, you know, we're going to need like 2 of everything. And so what does that bring us to in cards? 158. So we're almost at 160 cards. Ooh. And so you'll have a starting hand of 40 cards, like starting 20 each, so 40 total. So that'll leave like 120 cards in the store, and each turn you'll be quickly trying to upgrade your cards. And so I'm trying to think through how many turns it might take to go through it, because, you know, one of the key victory things is for the store to have no cards left. But maybe we also do it where there are, you know, how would you know though if there's no more exotics left? What if we limit the number of void opals to the exotics divided by 2 minus 1, and then we can do like the first player to X number of exotics as a secondary victory condition. So we have 19, the first player to 10? No, first player to 5? Yeah. So now we have 2 victory conditions, which is good. We're gonna add a few more cards. We're probably going to need to figure out how we can scale back some of the cards that we have. I would like to keep it to no more than ideally, you know, 3 playing card decks, right? So if a deck of cards has 52 cards, I'd like the, you know, what a person needs to purchase to be no more than 156 cards. And we're still looking at like, it'd be like a $50 plus game, which is just a lot of money. But I feel like there's a lot of potential playability in this if I can get the card effects right for all of these to make it interesting, right? And I still have to, like I said, add in the like event type cards, like delay opponents, reset or change the store, draw additional cards, mimic card effects. So if I want to keep it to 156 and we're already at 158, I'm gonna have to scale back. Like that's just how it is. So maybe there'll be less of some of these additional tiers to purchase to kind of make sure that that happens correctly. Deciding that would really be a like playtest opportunity, but since we're not playtesting this yet, I'm going to kind of adjust them to what I feel is right as like after I figure out the card effects. But before I figure out card effects, I think we'll call it here. In the next video, I'm hoping to focus in on those specific cards that we talked about here. I mean, we've already done the round trip, but the delay opponent cards, the reset change store, draw additional cards, mimic card effects, I'm going to go ahead and create those in the next video and make sure that they're in our card creator and change, like add some of our values to card creator so we can put together a print and play sheet. Thanks for watching.